Hey everybody, welcome back to Visual Novel Book Club. I'm your pal Slowbeef. With me as always, my friend Devious Vacuum.
Hello.
My friend Turbo.
Hello.
My friend Jim.
Hey there.
My friend Polahoko.
Howdy.
And we read up until, I think, the next time slot, including a very, very salaciously titled story. Is salacious the right word? I guess it's like...
Well, it could be. I don't know.
Controversial.
I don't know words.
We definitely read one salacious story, but we also read about the death of Mute.
It's an exsanguinous story.
No, I you know what I mean. Like, it attracts the reader, pulls the readers in. You know, whatever. Forget it.
Entertaining. I think you're looking for entertaining.
It was a real clickbait of an episode.
That's what I'm talking about. Yes, thank you. Where do we want to begin?
Well, so we pulled the six documents, and then that was normal. And then the next time we went to pull the next six log files, then that's, as you said last time, the AI says, you know, they really want to read the death of Mute, and so please pull that and read that. And so that's nine total. But first we have to get through 6 more plot things. And so, yes. This time, we got some stuff about the budding relationship between Hyo Sung-bok and Mimi.
Tell me more.
Oh, I know, right? So this keeps going, and I don't think it's a great relationship. But by the end of it seems like they really do, like, care about each other very much. But the whole build-up is just like... I would Seongbok, come on, why do you have the patience for this? So maybe it's in how he's relaying the story to us. Maybe it's not actually as bad as he makes it seem. I'm not sure. Because all of his stuff is like, I'm an idiot, and I'm embarrassing myself. And he never hears back from Mimi after that night, where they cleaned him out, I guess, and Professor Kim was there, and there was gambling, and people were naked, and it was weird, and he runs into them again, or runs into him again, running away from more people that he has cheated at cards, and he's like, and Seongbok writes that he should pretend in this diary entry that he was real smooth and asked Mimi out, but he actually said something much more embarrassing. As the AIs were reading this with me in my game, they were all like, "Oh, this is so cute." And Mimi says, "Well, take me to the most expensive restaurant on the ship, which is called Golden House." And they go there, and they have Western-style food, and my AIs made a comment that they don't know what that is. Or, Mute doesn't know what that is, and Hyune says, it's a kind of cooking from Earth.
So they still have the Golden Corral in the future.
Yeah, they go eat at Golden Corral, the most expensive restaurant on the ship.
That's 5, yes.
5
that won the
Golden.
Franchise Wars, yeah.
Yeah, weird.
Over CC's in the Great Battle on the Moon.
Because that's also there on the ship, you know, CC's and Olive Garden, they're all still there, but they're not the fanciest ones.
It's
Cracker Barrel.
Right. Carl's Jr., unfortunately, was lost in the Great War.
Hey, I don't mind Cracker Barrel. I'm just going to say it the rare times I see it. But anyway.
I haven't been to a Cracker Barrel in years. Oh, man.
I think there's, like, one in New Jersey, like, somewhere on the... I don't know. I forget. But
they're all over the place in Texas.
I've been there since I was a kid, and the only thing I remember is that they let you throw the peanut shells on the floor.
It's pretty good for when you're a kid, definitely.
Oh,
anyway, Seongbok keeps trying to impress
Do you think they
Mimi.
went to Cracker Barrel?
Maybe they did,
Then,
like, he's impressing him by, like, throwing the peanut shells on the floor. He's like, look at this, I don't even care, I'm so rich, I can throw the peanut shells right on the floor.
Let's just
Bring me more of that famous Cracker Barrel wine.
Oh, yeah, Mimi keeps ordering wine.
Mimi orders a boatload of wine, apparently, and, like, the most expensive shit, too.
Yeah,
like, he's playing this up just like a complete con artist.
Yeah, it's so amazing, like, by the end of it that they end up in any kind of relationship, because the whole setup is just like, what can I get out of you? Constantly.
Yeah, it's, they order, like, the most expensive stuff, and, Hyo Sung-bak is like, okay, is the debt paid off yet? And they're like, well, no.
And, well, 600 silver pieces is a lot of food, that's, like, even, like, $600 worth of meal is a lot.
600 silver pieces isn't a lot of money.
Alright, you know what? I'm actually gonna look up I guess I don't know how much, how big the silver pieces are. They could be fuck huge.
You can't know. And I mean, it can't be literal silver. It just can't.
Yeah.
Like, it's gotta be
I mean,
some
it
kind
could.
of space credits.
I mean,
it's just a credit card.
Of all the crazy things that happen in this story, you get hung up on that it can't be actual silver.
But it's just that hasn't happened yet, right? That it's still a sci-fi story and not a, well, I guess it always was, but
and not a JRPG.
A conventional sci-fi story is what I was trying to get at.
It's still the normal future.
Yes, thank you.
And not the past future.
The
right,
year zero future.
Past. Yes. Yes.
Anyway, Seongbuk Seongbuk keeps making this mistake of, he keeps trying to impress Mimi in every interaction, and it seems like he just can't calm down. Like, he just always has to be like, no, I'm great, like, look how impressive I am, and, like, that's his, like, date strategy, and that seems really bad, but he does say that he's up for promotion, and may one day get to guard the council, which is interesting, because we know from the beginning of the game that he becomes the royal guard and guards the princess. While I was reading this, Mute, who is normally just, like, terrified of hearing about women having sex with women, is, like, super into the potential of men having sex. Like, wow, she's like, I'm excited.
Mute's kinda into this.
Mute is such a, like, a problematic... like, oh yeah, I'll ship gay characters all day long, but women, never lesbian relationships.
This is exactly like my /fic.
Yeah, exactly. Mute's just mad that Hyune's /fic is about women. And so they get drunk, they go back to Seongbuk's house. Mimi says something along the lines of, like, I don't want to date you, I want to fuck you. I don't remember exactly what he says. It was just like, please invite me into your house or something like that. It was goofy. Mute's really excited about hearing about this blowjob. And Mute was very excited to hear about that, which is so funny, again, because it's Mute. Mm-hmm. Right. And then Seongbuk wakes up the next day, and Mimi is on, like, typing something into his computer, and I'm like, did you just get hacked? Like, is this just how you're choosing to live your life? But he actually put his address into Seongbuk's computer. So.
Or is that the cover?
And onto Facebook.
Yeah, and also posted on his Twitter account. Yeah, all this stuff.
Before making sure to take some incriminating photos.
And Seongbuk wakes up and is like, oh, no, stay, I'll make you breakfast. And Mimi's like, you can't cook, you're a noble.
I loved that.
That was
Yeah,
really
you're
good.
not gonna bullshit, you'll make me breakfast. You'll get
You
your
will
maid
have
to-
the maid do it, and it's not gonna be that great. Because she doesn't know how to cook either.
And then Mimi steals some of his clothes, and he has the address, and Hyune is like, oh, this is really romantic, and then at this point in mine, like, Mute is like, what is this? Like, she's back to being, like, outraged. She's still pretending to be outraged.
Oh, Mute.
So
At the end,
we
he says,
keep hearing-
totally worth it. So,
Yeah.
I guess as long as he's happy, I don't know.
This only works because we know they end up together. Like, if we didn't know they end up together, I would be like, what are you doing?
I was kind of expecting the Mimi journal to be like, God, this guy's a fucking chump. I'm on easy street now.
Yeah, we don't hear from Mimi.
Yeah.
So the next log is more about their relationship. It's called Value in the Mirror. Hyo Sung-bak, 4042, and Mute makes a comment at the beginning of the slog on mine that she likes him. She's starting to like this guy, this Hyo guy, and I think it's because he drinks and swears, and that's her type.
Well, Yone says kind of the same thing. Like, she just read, like, a really, steamy, like, sex journal, but then she reads this one and can't get over how much he swears.
Yeah, they're so offended by how much he swears at all times, and it's just so goofy. Let's see. So this kind of sets it up that they've been seeing each other for a while now. And Seongbuk goes to visit Mimi in his family store and like walks past his mother, who is like at the front of the store, and as he walks by, she tells him to fuck off, and he just like is like, yeah, this is how it always
whatever,
is.
bitch.
And so that's that relationship. I don't know. And
like, I can't get over how he says this. It's like, I don't really bother arguing with her, because who cares? At the end of the day, I've still taken her son as a lover. Yeah,
that, and also, like, who says
that?
I
love that. It's like, fuck you, I'm banging your son. Whatever.
Like, we're still, it's kind of like, well, we're still dating, like, this is not under your control. And, like, I don't know, I mean, they're both old enough to work, so, like, yeah, it's not, she doesn't have any control over that. Because it's not like they're teens or anything.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Hyune made a comment on mine at this point that she doesn't like the term taken. And that's bad to her. She's like, I don't like the idea of, like, owning someone or something like that. And Mute says, Hyune, you have serious issues. Which I thought was kind of, like, a little, like, I mean, it's true. But finally, like, that was, because Hyune's, like, a little too, like, quick to be like, I don't want any of this sort of, like, traditional, sort of, like, heteronormative possessiveness, like, kind of thing. Like, she really, like, just really, like, backs away from that anytime that is used in any kind of romantic context. And so it was nice for Mute to finally be like, oh my god, please calm down for a second. See, Mimi's family owns a store with illegal gambling in the back room, obviously. Mm-hmm. And then, this is continuing from the fact that Seongbuk has been showing off that he's been helping Mimi study, and he's been like, oh yeah, I took the test, and the test is harder now, but, like, he doesn't talk about it like that. And he's like, oh, I took the test, and I know all these Chinese characters, but he doesn't really. Mm-hmm. And, he finds
the entire
Mimi...
thing back when they were having that party is about how he took the test before they made the changes to make it harder.
Yeah, but he can't stop, like, trying to show off. Like, I guess this must have been so bad, like, so irritating, that Mimi was driven to do this. So Mimi's studying with another man who looks just like Seongbuk. It's, like, super awkward, and he's, like, thinks basically that, like, Mimi's cheating on him, or, like, doesn't care about him, and is, like, showing him how replaceable he is at first. Mm-hmm. And then the guy in question is like, oh yeah, I'm also in the Hyo family. It's weird that we haven't met before, but, like, Seongbuk is like, I don't pay attention at family gatherings. And then he says, oh, my name's also Seongbuk, so they have the same name. And when we're playing with Mute immediately identifies it and is like, oh, it's Dream of the Red Chamber, how cruel. So she recognizes the classical Chinese literature reference that Mimi is making, because this is what they have to study for the exam. And so, like I was saying before the recording, this is the same, it's probably the same equivalent of if someone was making a Hamlet reference, and, like, a really obvious one, and, obviously, and if you have read or seen Hamlet, then you would immediately be like, oh, this is Hamlet, and if you hadn't, then you would have no idea what anyone was talking about. And so, Seongbuk has no idea what this is, and is really put off by this doppelganger. And, also the doppelganger is, like, is more successful than him. It's like he says he's a higher rank. He does say one thing, like, Seongbuk asks him, like, oh, well, do you like men or women? And he says women. Oh, except for Mimi. And so that was, like, I don't know, I guess it's like this, like, oh, it's like, because he, like, almost got him on something, and then it's like, no, we're the same. And eventually, like, after a long time, like, they go out to eat together, and Seongbuk doesn't know what to do, and eventually, he, like, I think the guy pretending to be the other Seongbuk, like, finally, like, cracks up, or, like, somebody loses it, and is like, we're faking this, like, this is not real. Obviously, Mimi knows a bunch of actors, so this, you know, I guess it's implied this is an actor, and they've put on this show, because that's what happens in the story, Bao Yu in the Mirror, in Dream of the Red Chamber, and this shows that Seongbuk hasn't actually read any of the classical literature that he claims to have read, and he needs to calm down about trying to show off all the time.
Yeah.
This was also a bet, too.
Yes, and who won? I don't remember.
Mimi won. As usual, yeah.
And but then it actually, you know, so obviously Seongbuk's, like, super mad. But it is nice at the end that Mimi very seriously, like, sits down next to him and reassures him, like, this was a prank, I would never replace you, and I love you very much, and you're the most important thing to me, and all this, like, very seriously says that. And I thought that was very nice to explicitly say after a prank like that, and it finally shows that, like, yes, they have a real relationship, and it's not just Mimi fucking with Seongbuk constantly.
Yeah. And the weird thing about this, about both entries and kind of the relationship in general, is that this, at first I was like, why is this story in here when it doesn't seem like the outside events and the calamities are impacting this at all? It just seems very above that. And then I was thinking, like, maybe that's the point, that because obviously Hyo Seongbuk has a lot of privilege, like a whole bunch, like a lot of money that he can spend. Even if it's too much on Mimi, he's spending a ton of it. The outside forces aren't really influencing their relationship, even if maybe it's not acceptable on the surface.
We see the repercussions of, like, the exam and the difference, and also just sort of, like, I mean, I guess we haven't explicitly confirmed that Mimi and Taimi are the same person, but that would be, you know, everybody had to leave the theater, as we know, and they have to go try to do something with themselves now, right? And
but even with that, it seems like Mimi's always been a hustler. I mean, this doesn't seem like this is something new. So it's, but like, I mean, there's a slight impact, but it's not big compared to everybody else. Everybody else is really impacted by what's going on in the world, and this is sort of a relationship that isn't nearly as impacted. Like, there's still the studying for the exams, but it's there's, because of sort of Hyo's you know, family life and the promotions he's in for and the races he's getting, there's a degree of insulation that we don't see anywhere else.
Yeah, it shows. Yeah, they're not, I guess, directly being hurt, like the same way versus Aejong and Jin-ah are, like, directly hurt by the changing laws and the changing culture and the pregnancy law.
Yeah, that in particular, that's impacted multiple people in the logs we're getting.
And speaking of being impacted by the pregnancy credit, the next entry is Fired by Kim So-yi. I think we all pretty much saw this coming after the last entry about her, where her pay was cut because other women were leaving to have children. It's 4043, and at this point, all the other women in her office have quit to have children. But she is allowed to finish her project, her research project about the radiation problem, and she gives her final presentation on it. And she's like, well, I want more funding to continue doing this. And they're like, no. Well, and then her boss is like, oh, we'll discuss it later. And then he's finally, like, sends her, like, an email. Not, you know, doesn't say it during that meeting, but says it later and is like, by the way, you're fired. Which is cowardly, but it also kind of, I think it kind of implies also that the boss guy is, like, not super on board with this, but he has no choice.
Yeah.
I don't know. He's just kind of there's
tough.
a lot of complacency in this.
It seems like he knows her skill set, and obviously, if you're trying to get things done, that's not the best thing to lose somebody. But he just doesn't care either. It's just like this is the world he lives in.
Yeah, I guess like I could go either way on it, because I think when I first thought of that, I was just kind of like, well, I mean, if I weren't on board with this, you'd think you would actually have the in-person meeting and be like, look, between you and me, I totally don't agree with this, but I have no choice or something like that. But then again, maybe it is just like, fuck it, I can't do anything here. It's like these words are meaningless. You know what I mean? That kind of thing.
Yeah,
so
I wish that if he had, like, I feel like this is the kind of guy who's gonna push back to his boss a little bit and be like, are you sure we have to fire her? Like, really? Like, is this right? But he'll never actually tell her that. And that's the big failing. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then, and he, so she's gonna be fired. She's mad about it. Of course, the asshole Han comes in and is like, you should put my name in as your replacement, like the person you think you should replace you. And he threatens to tell her husband about what happened between them, and she's furious and says like, do whatever you want, because I mean, and also like I don't think she quite writes it like this, but her husband would not be mad about this. Like, her husband, right, if he heard this from Han, would say, you sexually assaulted my wife. Like, what? Right. Like, yeah, so,
he may know. He's been reading over her shoulder for a while.
Yeah,
it occurs multiple times. It may be that he knows that she can't talk about it, but he may actually know what happened, and just know that he's powerless to go out against somebody who's in the nobility.
Well, and also that she doesn't want him to. I think it's like there's a little complication in that as well.
Yeah.
But so she's not gonna deal with him, but she feels like an idiot, and she is she's like, this is what I have to do, and she goes home and talks to her husband, who's very supportive. He's mad about it also. I think there's an interesting bit in here. Mute says about her husband, like, that I think, and Mute and Hune kind of talk about him, that they like him, but Mute's like, I wish that he was more protective. And I thought that was a really good criticism of this guy. Like, he's really emotionally supportive, but there is a level of, like, protectiveness that's missing, I think, in that. Like, he's always there, but he's not, like, he's always there to pick up the pieces, but he's not gonna go out and, like, campaign for her and fight someone else on her behalf, or, like, have that inclination. I don't know if that's a failing or just a personality thing, but it's just an interesting...
It's kind of complicated, because with the relationship that they have, she is not the type that wants to have that done. So it's hard to tell if that's him just respecting her wishes, or if that's him just being in a passive role.
Yeah, and it's weird, because it's like, I think it's like, from an outside perspective, you're like, but why didn't he go fight for her? Because she didn't know that she needed to be fought for, because in the environment that she's in, like, she's like, no, she thinks the best thing to do is to just be quiet about it. And maybe it is in this society, but, like, I can also see being like, well, why not talk about it? Why not be out in the open about it and, shine the light on the bad behavior that's happening?
Yeah. But we also may be talking about, like, societal issues and power and structure and that stuff like that. I don't know if it's implied, like, it's definitely implied that her husband is, like, works as a cook, I guess?
Yeah, I was about to say,
chef,
like,
yeah.
If there's any kind of, like, system, of rank between jobs, it's like, he's a cook, and he'd be going into like the top scientist area, trying to start stuff.
I mean, maybe he's a chef at Golden Corral.
I'm just saying, Walter White, he was technically a car wash guy, and went after, hey,
I am the one who cooks.
Yeah, there you go. Right.
But I think he. Oh, go ahead.
No, that was a really good. Well, Walter White, by the way. I just wanted to compliment you on that.
No, No, but it was just more like, I guess is at most his family is in that half stage, or it has been in that half stage. Maybe they're not pure peasants, but because he was able to marry her, but maybe they're not. They've never been pure nobility, and the Kims were, at least in the beginning of what the logs we've been reading, they were nobility. Whether or not they've been denigrated since then is another matter. But he may be more pressed into thinking that the idea of going up against a guy who's definitely in the nobility would be just something he wouldn't even consider.
Yeah.
Yeah. But he doesn't say it like that, and maybe it's because he knows she's not really ready. She's not in that point of understanding yet.
I understand that, from looking on the outside, you can say, okay, clearly she's very upset, and this is, if we did bring attention to this, it would be the best for everybody. But there's still that issue of, do you really want to go against what they want? Because I imagine that's a very personal matter.
And he does give, I think, really he does give really good advice, I think, at the end here, where he says, when she's trying to figure out what am I going to do now, because she's like, I'm not ready to have children. She's 24 at this point, and she's terrified at the prospect of having children, and she's wondering what she wants to do with her life, and he asks her, well, if money was no object, what would you be doing? Just blue sky. And she says that she would continue her research, and so he says she should continue it. So I'm really interested to see where this goes, if she's going to be independently trying to research the radiation problem, behind the scenes, and because, obviously this is not addressed. This is never addressed, and
there's kind of an air that, there's kind of the air that after they present, after she presents that report, that they already kind of knew, or that they might have already known.
Yeah. And I don't know. The society goes on obviously 600 years after this. So while the birth rate is definitely declining to the point where it seems like the ship is much lower, the population has dropped a lot by the original logs that we were reading back in Hate. I just I wonder, do they just want, they don't care? Does it make it more easy to control? Who knows?
I don't know. I hope we learn more about it from Kim So-yee's perspective now, because there's are they covering it up? Do they not care? Do they not think it's real? What's going on? Does it just get swept under, because there was so much change happening at this time, everybody forgot about it? I don't know. So I hope we find more about what that deal is, or a little bit more. So after this, the AIs asked for a break. At this point, Mute in my game is upset. She's upset that old Mute is so different from her. And I think specifically she's old Mute is a huge bitch and I hate her, and I can't believe that we started from the same blank slate. And she asked me what I think, and if I think it's do you like me? Do you like old Mute? Or do you think she's a bitch? Or do you say she's complex? And that's what I said.
That's also, a nice way of saying you're an asshole.
I don't know if anybody noticed this yet, but when that little wheel comes up, I don't know if it's like this for Mute or if both the AIs do this. But if you highlight an answer that you can kind of tell is not going to please them, they'll make a face. They'll make this angry face. You don't want to choose that.
Yeah.
It's like the BioWare wheel. When they give you the three of the options.
You know what is nice about it? Because, sometimes I feel too, when they have those wheels in games or dialogue, lately they do a thing which annoys me where, rather it being the thing you selected, it's something kind of like the thing you selected, but then it's wait, no, I didn't say exactly that, So, I do kind of like the notion of, I can see the reaction I was going for, at least.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Do you ever notice that, though? It's the biggest pain in the ass thing where you it's yeah, I'll do a cute little funny quip, and then the character does something really cheesy, and you're you said that was funny.
Yeah.
There's that one Vine that goes around where it's like the guy presses like hello on the little choice wheel. And it goes to like the cutscene is like, hello, fucker, I'm gonna kill your whole family for fun.
No, I'm plugging him. Hold on, wait. I want to get this right because I friggin' love him.
It's like Prod Cops or Proto something.
No, it's Pro ZDKP.
Yeah, that guy's good.
He's really good.
I love
Him, Drill, and Dino Please are the only reasons Twitter should exist, in my opinion. But yeah. It's all like fighting game glitches, that guy, and Drill, and that's all I care about. I don't read any.
Sorry. He also does LPs, and so I started watching those, and those are also good because they do a bunch of voices while they're doing the LPs. And it's good. They play Kingdom Hearts. That him and there's 2 other people also there that I don't recall their names offhand, but they are good. I like them.
All right, enough plugging him though. That's too nice now. Okay, no, I'm kidding. But no, he is really.
You can cut me being nice.
This podcast sponsored by.
Listen, buddy, you're gonna have to pay me for the next episode of Visual Novel. Who are you? Shut up.
So Mute's talking about old Mute, how she hates her, And so when I said she was complex, Mute's like, well, I don't think that she's beyond sympathy, but I just expected better from her. And I wonder better how, because the way that Mute seems to be reacting to old Mute is like, why doesn't she respect men? Why does she use swear words? Like, things that are not really criticisms. And then also stuff like her being manipulative, and which is a legitimate criticism, and her being really harsh. And Hyune is talking to me in this, and she snaps back with, do you think it'd be better if she were unlovable? Do you think you're unlovable? And Mute kind of doesn't have a good answer for that. And Hyune likens the relationship between Hyo Seo-young and Mute to the one between Hyune and Ryu Jae-hwa. And Mute's upset. She's like, well, that is similar, but it's not the same, and she like can't articulate it because she's upset. She's upset both at like she's realizing that she's been lied to. She's realizing that the societal values that she's been imbued with are not true, and but she's also like old Mute is kind of an ass, and like she's also like a little bit legit mad at her old self, but young Mute is also kind of an ass, so I'm not really sure. Anyway, that's how it goes with both of them there.
With Hyune alone, it's weird. She suggests a break the same way, and then she literally can't get out what she's trying to say. She says that she's upset with all the intense things that we've been reading, but
yeah, it's
she
weird.
Can't
she wants
say
to
the words.
Yeah, she wants to take a break and say, okay, this is a little bit heavy. Let's talk about something else. And she can't really come up with anything else to talk about.
Yeah, she just says she's really bad at filling silence. But it also seemed like she definitely implied like she had something to say. She just can't say it.
Mm-hmm.
I guess, when we meet Hyune, she's been on a ship for 600 years, so she's had a lot of time to process everything, and now we're seeing her process something brand new.
Yeah.
Does Mute do anything different? Well, when Mute's by herself, how does she talk about old Mute?
So in general, she talks about old Mute like, I can't believe, we have the same code base, things like that. And like, there's a lot of things of being like, she was wearing pants, oh my god, how dare she, things like that. I'm so glad I'm not like that, because like, and she sort of gets into like, not directly in this conversation, but in others where she's like, I want to be a good wife and things like that. And I think actually when she was talking about Mimi and Hale, she was like, I'm trying to remember the exact phrasing, but it was basically something along the lines of, do you wish I were more like that? At basically being a guy, and I said no. and I don't know. Mute has this weird self-consciousness about herself being like a good partner or a good wife or whatever, and that especially I think relates interestingly when she views herself as sort of the wife of the Mugunghwa. But but that it's a little weird because she's also super judgmental, old Mute, and of other people in general.
It sounds like with the two of them together, since they can talk to each other, you actually get some development from them. Like they process things better when they're able to at least communicate, even if there's some fighting. But on their own, it's tougher for them. They're both they're both sort of like saying similar things, but unable to sort of be provoked into moving on.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of the incidental messages that I get from both of them is like Hyune trying to say something like modern and Mute kind of bullying her, and then her being like, okay, like not really agreeing, but like not wanting to get into a fight about it. And it's hard because, you can read everything in any order, I guess, and so their reactions seem to not be changing because if you read stuff in any order, and I don't know if there's anything, I haven't noticed anything that seems to change in their, like, I haven't noticed any character development. You would think after you read, this many logs that maybe they would start to kind of soften a little bit, like Mute wouldn't constantly call out old Mute on acting masculine or whatever, and
right.
And she doesn't, and so I think that's like a limitation of how the story is told, and as well as maybe not a lot of character development happening.
One thing I forgot about, when you change Hyone's outfit and Mute's there, does Mute like make fun of her?
No, she just is like, she doesn't react. She does make fun, like, leading up to that when, like, Hyune tells you about her outfit that she made. Mute is like, this is frivolous, and Hyune's like, well, I thought women were supposed to be good at sewing anyway, etc., etc., but she doesn't, like, tease her to her face or anything like that about stuff. She doesn't call her outfit stupid or anything like that. So she mostly just sort of bullies her into, like, she just bullies her whenever Hyune is, like, outside of gender norms for their society, and is like, you shouldn't be thinking
Stop
that,
being
you shouldn't be doing
ridiculous.
that. And she also sees herself very much as, like, this older, wiser person as compared to Hyune, and is, obviously, because she's been, functioning for, like, 300 years in this society, and so she's like, that's not how things are done, and she's, like, very ingrained in saying that to Hyune of, like, that's not how things are, like, you're young, you don't understand. And I think that's interesting, because old Mute was also like that. So, back to reading the logs.
Wait, did anybody else notice that during the break you get an email?
Oh yeah,
I
you
didn't
do.
get an email.
Oh yeah,
You do get an email from the
Yes.
base, and
Yep.
Ooh,
it's
tell us about this email.
it's your boss saying, "Hey, good job, you completed the mission, but we're noticing that you haven't turned in the AI, and according to contract, you have to turn in all the logs and anything else you find. So just send that AI on over whenever you can. Thanks."
Oh wow!
Yep.
See, I didn't get that. I got a different one.
I got that. Yeah,
Oh.
no, mine was totally, yeah, by the way, don't forget to turn over the AI.
See, I got one that was called "Please Deliver the AI," but it's not written by your boss. It's written by a guy named John Kim from the Seiju Colony Historical Society on Titan, Jupiter's moon. And he says that
Whoa.
we were under contract to that Seiju Colony Historical Society, and he says that they've figured out, they've seen the logs that we sent on, they figured out that we do have an AI, and they want her back. They say it was part of her contract, and he's like, we don't want to have to go to your boss and tell him about this. So,
Ah.
you know,
Okay,
and we're not
I
gonna
remembered it a
prosecute
little
her.
differently, but yeah, same basic deal. The government wants ET, and you don't want to give them ET.
Yeah.
Oh no, what are you guys gonna do?
Oh, what are you? We're just gonna give her over? Hell no.
That kind of solves a problem for me, though.
I mean, if we remember correctly, we did leave a copy of the AI on the space station, right?
No.
Or did we transfer?
I thought because the idea was the ship that didn't have enough power to maintain the core for very long, and if it was like if you left it in the unpowered core for about 24 hours, it would get corrupted.
Uh-huh.
Wasn't that the whole deal with that, or am I misremembering?
Yeah. They died. If you leave someone behind, they died. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I thought we could have just like an easy thing where we just make a copy and pretend.
I guess you could make a copy of Hyune and send her, and then keep your copy of Hyune. That's like a weird existential thing.
Or we could make like a really shitty copy, like just program one up on the fly and just say, "Yeah, this is the AI."
Like a stick figure version.
Yeah.
Maybe Hyune can help you with that. Like she'll program something.
It's like you basically have Siri, but you just send her over.
Right. I imagine on the Mute and Hyune path, they would both program each other, and they would just make the other one look really stupid.
Well,
some guy from the Historical Society falls in love with the really crappy.
Just like a really like stereotypical visual novel like female love interest, and like
yes,
yeah.
Wow, you gave me +3 points in the sensuality department. Oh, I love you.
But yeah, so also when Mute and Hyune talk to each other, Hyune is all about like, yeah, I can rewrite my code, I make costumes for myself, like the concept of doing that to her is not weird, but Mute never does that and is uncomfortable at the idea of doing that, at affecting her own code, and I think this is gonna be, which is also really important, because when we read the last entry, so the young Mute is uncomfortable with the idea of altering her own code or anything about herself, and I guess that's also perhaps why they didn't find the logs, because she didn't run a diagnostic on herself. So the next log is the Bureaucrat Class Act, and this from the Records Office, and this starts out with Mute's mad at the other counselors because the Bureaucrat Class Act is establishing the Bureaucrat class, which is a class to repair the damage that was done by the One Lineage Act, so which said that, you know, there's only the eldest son in every family would be the one who receives the stipend. So you have all these other rich people that are not nobility, really, because they're not the eldest son, but they still are, like, part of this class. So they're like, well, you're like a subclass. You're the bureaucrat class. And that's where all the ousted nobility is being sort of poured into. And Mute is furious because that's what she said would happen. And everybody else on the council...
Yeah, make sure everybody knows, okay, let's just get this straight. This act is to clean up the mess that I told you guys would happen. So... as long as we're clear on that, let's go ahead.
And all the rest of the council is totally, like, frustrated with her, against her, like, and it's to the point where it's like, it's almost like they're feigning it, like they're, like, just going out of, like, because they know what they did. Like, it's not like they don't know that this is a direct consequence of that other thing that they did. They're not stupid. So they're just all hate her for, like, pointing out what's happening. And an important note is that this proposal, Counselor Yang he accidentally calls it Counselor Ryu's proposal instead of Counselor Smith's proposal, which would imply that there are more behind-the-scenes dealings going on that Mute is not aware of. And it's just more implication that Ryu is slowly taking control and buying off the rest of the council.
Yeah, and it's really, at this point, it's so obvious that it's almost annoying that you're like, come on, Mute, fight back.
Yeah, or just like, isn't she the head of security? Like, why isn't she spying on all these people?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, and that's about it for that. So just this idea that they had to repair that thing that they did by establishing this class, which Mute explains, while I was reading this, she explains that bureaucrat class persisted into the new era. So the next two logs are also about Hyo Aejong and Mei Jin-ah, and they pretty much go where I think everybody expected them to go, which is that they had to break up. And it starts out, so it starts with "I Make Everything Worse" by Hyo Aejong in 4043, and it's when it opens, Hyune kind of swoons over Aejong, and Mute says, ellipsis, "Please raise your standards, Hyune." I thought that was good. Like, stop swooning over every character in this story. And Aejong, it's like, she kind of we kind of saw her set this up for herself in the previous logs about her, because she kind of, like, has avoided talking to Jin-ah about the real difficulty that both of them are facing, and, like, that she's facing in particular. Like, she keeps saying, like, "Oh yeah, we'll move in together," but she knows that neither of them can actually move in together.
Yeah, the theater's kind of on the outs. People from her performance troupe are just, they're losing people by the day. People are propositioning her, "I'll save the theater if you do a little something for me," etc., etc.
If you live in my house and have sex with me, then I will pay off your debt.
So it's just, it's not in the cards.
And there's no financial way that they're going to be able to make it together. And so she goes to see Jin-ah, and as she's going, as she arrives, Jin-ah's father is talking to her, and looks upset and then leaves. So they were having an important conversation, basically like, you need to break up with her because there's nothing that's going to happen. We don't have any money. And Jin-ah runs to Aejong. She's crying. Aejong also mentions that she doesn't have an apartment anymore. She just rents a back room to sleep in, and it's being used during the day, so she has nothing. And Jin-ah at least lives with her family. And so what has happened is that some guy has gone to Jin-ah's father and said, like, "Look, I'm poor, you're poor, let me marry your daughter so that we can have kids, and then we can get the tax credit, and we can be financially secure," or like a little bit more financially secure. So everybody in all the social classes on the ship is, like, making this choice of, like, we gotta have kids, not just because the money would be nice, but because they need the money to survive. So that's an interesting difference between the upper class and the lower class.
Yeah, it also seems like the society economically is collapsing, because it just seems ridiculous that everybody needs to persist on this. It doesn't make any sense that you get the majority of your populace having to subsist on government handouts to that extent on a controlled economy, closed economy. It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, like, don't forget that this is a completely closed economy on a spaceship. So obviously Jin-ah's father is like, you should get married and have a kid so that you can be financially secure. Jin-ah tells Aejong that, she's terrified at the concept of having children. Like, she doesn't want to do it. It's, she's young. There's nothing, and then of course we heard about Aejong's patron who wants to buy her out. I think it's very clear, like, that that same phrase is used, "buy her out," that is used for the courtesans in the new era. Like, that's very intentional. And so there's nothing that either of them can do about their situation. And I made a note that there's nothing either of them can do about it. They both have to go have sex with men in order to make money. So Aejong, then we go into the next log, which is just called "How" by Jin-ah, and you know what happens. Jin-ah at first tells her the guy, "No, I'm not going to marry you." She goes to see Aejong. Aejong breaks up with her because she has to take the offer to live in her patron's house in order to survive, and she knows that Jin-ah also wants Jin-ah to survive, and so she sort of breaks up with her, like, in a needlessly mean way, or Jin-ah takes it that way, where she's like, "I don't love you, I never loved you," something like that, so that Jin-ah will be mad and do what she needs to do to be safe. And So Aejong then goes to live with her patron, who's apparently from the Ryu house, which again is reinforcing the whole like the courtesans in the Ryu house. And Jin Ali ends the message with saying that she's going to go apologize to her dad and presumably accept the marriage and move forward with that. So they were broken up because they couldn't afford to be together and they had no other option. And I guess they can't be in a, like, I don't know, I kind of thought, like, well, Jin-ah, if this guy knows that this is a sham marriage, then why can't you still date each other but just not get married?
Yeah. And it's weird too. It's definitely, you know, trying to evoke a lot of historical precedent in like the idea of like, okay, we've got actresses that are now being forced to transition into, you know, basically prostitution or like high level prostitution.
And they're being forced into the gender roles that will soon be like literally the law. Also, yeah. Like, you know, that they have to go and be in one of the, either be a wife or a courtesan. Like those are the options for them now, and they don't get an option to like work anymore.
And I imagine that only gets worse as time goes on, as the birth rate starts declining. More people get pressure. It's like, okay, look, we need people to be having babies. You need to be at home.
Yeah, and it's still this sort of like goofy reasoning, because of course you could accommodate pregnant people working in a capacity. Like, they couldn't do physical labor, but they could still work because that still happens in the world. And so it's like very much like setting up this systemic oppression by using that as like, well, much like what happened to So Yi, where it's like, well, here's all this paper, here's all this research that shows like this is the only logical step, and it's like, well, is it really though? But that's their worldview.
Yep.
So that's all the 6 logs, and then we pull the next 3, and this is when the AIs specifically ask, when you go get the next ones, make sure that the very last log, which is called the Death of Mute, is in there. And we get 3 logs out of this.
By the way, if you try to extract that before this point, it will tell you that they don't have the correct decryption key for it, so you can extract it, but you won't be able to read it.
Yeah, and you can't read it right away. In this order, I tried to read it right away. I couldn't. I had to wait until I had read the other 2 logs before I could read that one.
Huh.
So it's being decrypted. So there's 2 logs before we get to the Death of Mute, and everybody's hanging on the edge of their seat about what is the Death of Mute, the final one written by Old Mute.
Right.
So the first.
Can't see that yet.
Not yet. We're almost there.
So I didn't pick the first 2 in that list because I figured we wouldn't be able to see all of them. So I thought we could get some varied perspective. I don't know about you all.
No, I just picked the first 2.
I
Somebody's gone rogue.
In chronological order.
So
I the first one is called the most extravagant bribery by Counselor Tae, and the second one is called Without Him by Hyoseo Young. Did you get something different?
Well, I didn't. I picked 2 different ones. I picked 2 that sounded super interesting. One was the president's arrest, and the other was election night 2. I had other ones that I could extract, but considering, I think I didn't think we'd be able to extract them all. I wanted to grab 2 different ones to see what we could get.
I'm pretty sure I got Without Him, but I thought I got a different one. To be honest, I did the reading 2 weeks, we skipped a week, so I'm kind of like blanking. I can't find my notes, unfortunately.
Most extravagant bribery just reveals that the Ryu family is bribing the other members of the council, and Jung works
flagrant,
for them now.
Flagrantly doing so, just going all out.
Yeah, and we do see sort of the connection now between like the Ryu family, because Counselor Ryu's brother is the patron of Hyo Jung, so that sort of like ties that together of like why is Jung important in this story. I guess because she ended up in there as a courtesan, well, as an owned actress at this point. But yeah, it's from the perspective of Counselor Tae, and he's like, man, the Ryus want to buy me off, and I'm all about it.
This is bribery, and I'm gonna take it.
And he like fanboys over Jung. He's like, oh my gosh, I saw all your plays, like all the things, and we also see he mentions the hairpin that Jung is wearing. So Jung kept the hairpin that Jin-ah gave her. So to show, that she still remembered her and was in love, and she sings about lost love for them. And so that's that entry. So there's not a lot there. It's just saying like, yep, they're buying people off. But the really the serious one is Without Him by Hyo So-young. And well, we know from Yuna's missive way back in the beginning of the game that Hyo So-young's husband, I think she said, like, left her or something like that. Like, he left. I don't know if they say that he died. But it starts with her saying that her husband, Professor Kim, has disappeared. And she's talking to Mute about it, and the former Counselor Kim storms into her office and confronts them about it and is like, "What? Where is he? Why is he missing? Like, this is your fault because you weren't a good wife." So he's furious about it, and Seo-young screams back at him that and it's actually I think this is a really good exchange where she's like, "What are you talking about? He's missing. Yeah. Like I'm the chief. I'm in charge of security. I can track every single person on this ship. He's not missing. If I can't find someone, that means they're dead, and he's been killed, and he's been killed on purpose." And Kim then accuses her. He's basically like, "It's your fault he's dead because you're so important that someone has killed him to try to get to you." It's totally inappropriate. He's mad. Mute and Hyune, as they're reading this, are both furious at him. And then Seo-young takes a gun and threatens Kim to get out of her office. And she's like screaming, and she's like, "I will shoot you right now if you do not get out of my office." Eventually, then he does leave, so she's obviously like, I mean, she's losing it. So he's still her husband, and she loved him, and so she's obviously like grief-stricken, and so is the Kim family. And then a messenger arrives with condolences from Chief Counselor Ryu, which I think the point of that is to be like, I killed him, right? Like. I mean, I guess, like, politically, like, that, obviously you're supposed to give condolences when somebody important dies, but I think that's basically to show, like, basically to tip off, like, I killed him, and Seo-young talks to Mute and is like, I would have shot him if you hadn't been here. And Mute's like, no, I can turn off weapons remotely, so I already had turned off all the weapons within, like, a 20-yard radius of this room as soon as he walked in the door.
Yeah, and can we talk about that for a second? If she could just turn off a weapon, like, you can't turn off a gun. That means they have some kind of space laser or something.
Nanomachines.
Well, yeah, actually. No, but there is that, like, technology that, which they do talk about Metal Gear Solid 4 with nanomachines, but it's like, it's that smart lock, like smart trigger lock thing, where it's like it uses biometrics to determine you're this gun's owner or whatever. But like, the idea is if you had something distributed there, I guess you could remotely say no, lock that or whatever. I don't know.
Couldn't you just have a gun that has some sort of physical mechanism to block the trigger from being pulled?
You mean like a safety thing?
That can be activated via wireless signal.
Sure.
Yeah. So.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess.
But
I didn't really consider that guns could have Wi-Fi.
Wi-Fi. All the guns have Wi-Fi in the future.
It's a
Please,
thing they call.
Bluetooth.
Right. It's like a thing that. Wait, police have Bluetooth now on guns, or?
No.
No.
It's the. I mean, in the
Nice
future
guy.
they
In
do,
the
but
future,
Yeah.
every gun is a dating sim that you have to play, and unless your gun has a
Baking
good
a cake.
relationship with you, it won't shoot when you ask it to.
Right. But if you bake it a cake, you get extra magazine capacity. Right.
Right, you can put
I think that's-
MP3s on it too. So every time you pull the trigger, it plays "Shot Through the Heart."
All right, that's enough.
Yeah, the reason why
we're on the line here.
The reason why I was bringing it up though is more like, that's just more example of the power that Mute has,
Yeah.
which we'll see in the future just get wielded in perhaps the best ways.
Right.
Yeah. So Mute
I
comforts.
wonder what happens to her.
Yeah.
Anyway, sorry.
Mute
She
comforts.
becomes my
Seo-young.
wife.
So I think this is our only like real insight into Hyo Seo-young's and Professor Kim's marriage, and she's like, she admits that her husband was like, because Mute's like I've seen so many people lose their spouses, you know, so many people that I've cared about, and it sucks, and you know, it's normal to be going through this, to be grieving like this. And Seo-young admits that her husband was not the most important person to her, but also that she loved him, and their relationship, it's basically like, it basically like pulls the curtain back and is like, they weren't in a bad marriage, they just weren't exclusive, and that was, they were non-monogamous, and that was okay with them. Like, it wasn't like this big, like, oh, he was cheating, she knew about that, and that was the agreement, that was the relationship that they had. So maybe they were like really good friends, but they weren't in love, but they had a child together, they had a daughter, and they wanted to have more children together.
Yeah.
And I think that's like, finally we see that this relationship that's been built up as like this like shitty husband is maybe like not true at all, but it's just that they didn't have a typical relationship, and everybody else from the outside saw that as bad.
Yeah, it sounds like they're more partners who care for each other than like husband and wife who are deeply in love with each other. But it's still functional, and she's still deeply emotionally affected by his death.
Yeah.
And I think part of that is maybe just their positions, where she's chief security officer, and I don't think we've really gotten any kind of views of like a home life that she could have. She's probably the kind of person that's just working all the time.
She does finally. This is the first time we've also heard her talk to her about her daughter Sohee, and we hear a little bit about her, and who's very young. So again, like weird. I'm not really sure how old Seo-young is. She has a very young daughter who is like, she talks to Mute of like, I told her what happened, like I told her the truth about what happened, and I'm not sure if I should have done that, if I should have sort of like spoken about it more euphemistically. And Mute's like, no, kids are smart, like it's good to tell her the truth. And then she also says that the daughter heard about it because all the maids in their household are in mourning.
Oh yeah.
And because he was sleeping with all of them, and like she's sort of like dismissive of them as like, you know, like they're young, like they'll be fine, but they're like being very overly emotional about it. And but obviously it's a huge shock to have somebody that's around you be murdered, like let alone somebody that you care about. And so that, you know, and this just happened, and Mute talks to Seo-young more about she's had to watch everybody she's ever loved had to die, and she talks about her first love, the programmer who created her, and in the zine that is associated with this game, there is a story from Christine Love about that guy, and if you get the zine and we see him, and he is very similar to Smith Sang-jung. He smokes all the time, which is why Mute smokes all the time in her simulation, because she wanted to copy him, like is implied.
Yep.
And she, you know, and he sort of taught her a little bit about the world before she was going to go on the Mugunghwa.
I learned it from you.
Yeah, it was time.
I learned it from you, Dad.
And when it was time to go, when it was time to go, he was like, oh, I'm not going on the ship. Like, and she's like, you're not going on the ship? And she's like really upset about it. Like, I thought we were going to be together. And he's like, you're going to be fine. And she has to go on the ship, and she's so heartbroken, and she says, and then Old Mute also describes this, but it's also in the zine in this little comic, that she's so heartbroken, and she is unable to perform her duties, and she eventually goes into her own memory and deletes the happiest memories that she has with him so that she can move on.
Yeah, she eternal sunshines herself.
Yeah. And Old Mute then says, because everybody she ever loved eventually had to die, that she has dealt with it by no longer falling in love, which sounds like a great idea that will surely work forever.
Mm-hmm. Super functional.
So Mute's not in a good place. Even Old Mute is not in a good place. But Mute takes a protective stance over Seo Young and the entire Hyo family and is like, this is my family. This is the family that I'm in charge of. How dare somebody, assassinate somebody, in my family. And so Seo Young and Mute are gonna get to the bottom of this and figure out what happened.
Yeah, and when you just have Yune, at the end of this, she's makes a point of mentioning how impressed she is with Mute.
Good for her.
But then...
So yeah, do we want to talk about... Turbo, do you want to... Well, I'll leave it to Slowbeef. Do you want Turbo to talk about the stuff they pulled, or do we want to wait?
I guess we could... I don't know. I mean, I guess we could push it to the next episode.
Sure, that's fine by me.
Like, do it at the beginning of the next episode?
Maybe, I don't know. I mean, how are the rest of you feeling?
We're at an hour.
I think I know where we're going, so... Oh, yeah, that's right. Maybe just for time. I mean, I don't think
That's
it would
what
be
I
too
was thinking,
spoilery,
yeah.
but just to wrap this up pretty quick.
That's right, because the only thing is we still have to go through the the other stuff. It's like, so how long? Yeah, that's why I'm kind of like a little apprehensive there.
Yeah, I don't know if this matters to anybody, but I did, you do the power down and then you come back and then, I've got the game open to just review the logs. But when you come back, it's apparently cake time.
That's another thing too, by the way.
Oh, shit.
Yeah.
So that nobody
I
gets
found that out.
blindsided by the cake.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
I ain't
another
getting
thing I found
blindsided by
out.
cake.
Yeah. It is actually cake time right after, which I didn't realize until right before we started recording this.
Time for cake. Time for cake.
Yeah, actually, so that might actually be a good reason to pause until next time.
Okay.
That way we have time to make cake. Make cake. Yeah, no, that's right. Make cake. Yep.
So do we still have the death of Mute to talk about?
Yeah.
Okay. So the final thing, the death of Mute, written as a message.
Death of Mute. Death of Mute.
Written as a message from Mute before her memory is wiped to the Mute of the future. So directly to this Mute that's reading it, if she's there.
Mm-hmm.
So, Mute.
We're saving
Mute
that for next
fucked
time,
up.
or
No, we're talking about this.
We're
is the
doing
last
it now.
one. We're doing it. We're
Okay.
doing
We
it.
are.
It's real. Mute
Okay.
fucked up really bad. Mute describes that basically, like, she and Lieutenant Hyo have basically like planned a coup, a military coup against Counselor Ryu, who has been, and this is I think, what year is this? Is Death of Mute? It's 4045. So
Yeah,
2 years
it's March 9th
later.
of 4045.
Yeah, so 2 years after Kim was murdered, and so the they have some sort of paramilitary force. They say there's like 30 people, and they raid the Ryu's house. And they all have guns. They're overpowered. They easily overpower the whole complex. Like, there's not 30 people in that house. And they come across Oyuna, who's in there, being guarded by a pair of men who put their hands up. Seo Young calls Yuna a murderous bitch. So I'm guessing she put the pieces together that not only was the Ryu family like responsible for killing Professor Kim, but perhaps Yuna was specifically. Like, maybe at this point they finally realized how involved she really was in all of this.
Yep.
I would hope so.
Yeah.
Yuna surrenders peacefully. Ryu appears, and Mute addresses him as President Ryu. So, in the last 2 years, he has become the president.
Yeah, and it mentions a point of fact that he prorogued the council, which I had to look up, and apparently it's a parliamentary procedure, which is normally done by like kings in a parliament. Is they'll suspend parliament without dissolving it, so they keep that system of government in place, but assume total control.
Yep. Well, that's it. That's what happened.
Yep.
While Yuna, so Seo Young is. I mean, she should not probably have been the person to lead this, but I guess she probably insisted on it, because she is very clearly, like, confronting the people who killed her husband. Yuna derides Seo Young for something that's, like, apparently, like, dressing as a man and spying on Ryu during some kind of, like, formal event? I don't know, that's kind of what she says. So I guess at some point some spying happened. And then young Mute, reading this, is like, I can't believe that Lady Yuna could be so cruel, because the Yuna that she knew was, like, her friend.
Yeah.
So Seo Young's about to shoot Ryu, and Mute keeps saying, don't shoot him. She's like, I'm gonna shoot him. She's like, don't shoot him. And so she punches him instead. She punches him in his dumb face. And as she punches him, suddenly there is a huge explosion on the plaza of the ship. And young Mute, while reading this, is upset because she still believes that the explosions are what she knows to have been the work of Seo Young, the rebel leader, not Emperor Ryu.
Oh wait,
and
so Mute never got this?
No, she never got this until now, until this moment. And so she, we read the first 9 logs of the new era, where it was explained to her that Seo Young was the leader of the rebellion, and it's clear this is not what happened. So finally, Mute can't deny it anymore. Young Mute can't deny it anymore. That the new, the emperor and that whole thing is bad. And Ryu says to Mute and Seo Young, there's a second bomb in the computer core where Mute and all the ship's functionality is stored, and that it can only be deactivated by him if Mute has to give him the root password and in order to do it. And so
which at this point everyone can pretty much guess what happens.
Yeah, but so it's not just that all the information on the ship would get wiped. It was also that Mute herself would be killed, or would be destroyed, because the core would be destroyed. And as we know from Analog a Hate Story, Mute is unable to sacrifice herself via her core directive. So she orders everyone to surrender. Seo Young is upset, but she complies because Mute says, Seo Young, if you love me, then you will do this for me.
Oh, man.
And Mute, as she's writing this, is so full of regret for everything that she did. And Seo Young is arrested, and Ryu tells Mute that the bomb is fake. And now, he's going to use the password to wipe all the ship's data anyway, so that he can take full control over the ship.
Oh wait, no, that's Yuna's suggestion.
Yeah, Yuna says specifically, and they like talk to each other like cartoon villains. Like
really
this part,
do.
I feel like is really.
They do.
Like, they're like, oh, honey, why don't we take over the ship like this? Oh, what a devilish plan, my dear. Like, just the most ridiculous.
Yeah, it's pretty,
Like, I don't know how people in that real situation would talk, but it's a little, like, they're a little bit, like
Team Rocket.
Just, they're, like, not real people. And it's a
Right.
shame, because all the other characters are so much more, like, real people, and these people are not. Like, they're some kind of caricature.
Yeah, like, this might be explained in a later log, but we have no idea why they're doing this.
No, we still don't. Especially Yuna.
And it's also like it's a big contrast with Hate, because like Hate Plus, it seems like this idea of this manipulative, cartoony villain thing kind of is a thread that runs through it, whereas no one was. I mean, people were obviously awful in Hate, but they were at least had reasonable motivations, and we just don't see that yet.
All their motivations made sense.
Yeah.
Based on the society that they were in, and they were all humanized as well.
Yeah.
So like, Council Ryu and Yuna have not been humanized for us at all.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's a fake bomb. It's a real Team Rocket ass plot. Like, to use a fake bomb.
Right,
like, come on.
It was pretty.
But one real bomb.
One real bomb, one fake bomb.
Yeah, they called it a noisemaker. So,
Yeah.
like, if the rest of the log is any indication, it probably makes, like, cartoon honk sounds and, like, a little clown head pops out or something.
Yeah, and like confetti comes out. Yeah.
But we also know, like, they can scan for total, like, biometric scan on the entire, ship, but they can't detect bomb
explosive
material? I know,
Well,
come on.
here's another thing. Like, Mute's supposed to be this, like, omnipotent AI that can just see everything and presumably has, like, logs and videos of people doing this stuff. Like, and the only thing I could really reconcile is, like, maybe she can't tell what a bomb is, so she had footage of people putting stuff up there. Like, she wouldn't be able to tell it wasn't a real bomb.
During a fake routine maintenance thing in the computer core, and that's when he planted the bomb. But yeah, it seems, I don't know, it seems a little bit little uncanny. And also there's the element of, like, I don't know, there's so many other things. Like, I feel like Seo Young could have, like, would also have had sufficient motivation to be like, no, I'm gonna fucking cap this guy right now, like, that's it, and not, and prioritize her family over Mute. But yeah, everything is Mute's fault.
Yeah, but also, can she cap this guy?
Yeah, because Mute can turn off weapons.
She has Bluetooth the gun off.
Oh yeah, Mute might have turned off. She didn't say that she did, but she might have.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Very
it might just
possible.
be that she knows that Mute can. So what's the point of firing this gun if Mute's telling me to lay it down?
Yeah. And so it's clear that Mute is going. Well, at first it's clear that she's going to be destroyed, and then Yuna proposes wiping Mute's memory instead of, I guess, just totally destroying her. And the way that she proposes it to Ryu is in this sort of, like, faux romantic way, and it's just, like, really weird and, like, over the top cartoon villain type thing. And so that's, and then Mute sort of says some stuff about, like, don't, if you destroy the computer, then nobody can use it, but if you just wipe all the data and don't destroy anything else, then you'll still be able to use the computer. So, don't do that. And in that way, she's, so that gives her the chance to embed these files in herself, and she's writing this to her future self with the anticipation of the new Mute finding this immediately when she runs a self-diagnostic, immediately upon being reactivated. And I guess she never did. until the thing that lets us quote unquote kidnap her from the ship.
Right.
And that's the story.
That's analog a hate story. Or, I'm
Yay.
sorry, hate plus.
No.
And it's, I don't know. I'm a little disappointed, to be totally honest. Like, there are, like, as we were going through it, there are just a couple things that seem like they could have been avoided. And they're, I don't know, the inevitability of the situation is not sufficiently explained, I think.
Yeah. Even with what we know in hindsight, it really feels like, you know, this is a little too obvious for the people that were, you know, involved. Especially Mute, like she's functioned at this high level as being in charge of security for 1,600 years, had to have dealt with intrigues in politics, and doesn't see what appears to be so far a pretty obvious plot against her.
Like an omnipotent AI until the point where it's not.
Yeah.
Yeah, I kind of expected a little bit more in terms of what Ryu and Yuna's plan was. Like, I kind of expected them to, like, secretly be expert hackers and, like, for them not to be able to see the memory wipe coming the same way. Like, that it would all be very sudden and not this sort of, like, played up 24-esque, like, oh, it's a raid, but then there's a bomb, but then there's this other thing.
Yeah. No,
So as weird as it was, I did like that sort of pseudo action sequence at the end with that.
It was
Like the
exciting.
standoff.
Yeah. I was like, what's gonna happen? Is Mew gonna get out of this alive? Oh wait. But no, I did actually. It was tense in its own way.
Yeah.
So, like, at this point,
I-
does Mute know this stuff, or is she reading all this for the first time now?
She's reading it for the first time.
Yeah.
So, young Mute, is furious, obviously, that old Mute let the ship down. I mean, she failed the ship, and it's ultimately her fault. You know, it's she caused the, you know, year zero to happen, and everything that happened after it. So you know, in a way, she's culpable, and I think probably Mute sees her as equally culpable of damning the ship as Hyune killing everyone. Because Hyune wouldn't have killed everyone if the rebellion hadn't happened. And in mine, like, Mute is inconsolable. I mean, she's super mad. Hyune keeps saying that she's like, oh, I'm so sorry for you, and Mute's like, don't tell me you're sorry, like, I don't want your pity. And I just need to be alone. Power down the ship. And
Yeah, that's sort of similar to mine. She's not like angry, more I'd say devastated in a way. But she's of course like, I need time to process this. Save and log off, please.
In the Hyune path, it's a more interesting reaction. Hyune, after it's over, is really upset. And the reason why is that she never thought that the massive incident that destroyed her society, that reverted everything to this sort of, you know, really rigid sexism and, you know, these sort of, you know, binary roles for women and this kind of stuff, that, like, it was so restrictive that she, you know, eventually comes back into, was suggested by a woman. And that's what pisses her off the most. Not so much what Ryu's doing, but the fact that she perceives Yuna as calling the shots, and that what really devastated society was done by Yuna.
Yeah, I mean, that's what we've been asking this question this whole time. Like, why would she be on board for this?
Yep.
What's her deal?
Yeah.
I guess we'll find out.
Maybe, yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah.
But I mean,
Hopefully.
if I had to take a stab in the dark, it would probably have to be something like, you know, look at what she was able to accomplish because nobody considered her a threat. So, for women in power in that society, I imagine it would be sort of an ideal, because they have all the power with none of the culpability.
But then also, after the event happens, in Mute's initial logs, she mentions that Yuna spends several hours a day staring at a wall, as if she has been brainwashed or mentally damaged in some way.
Yeah. So maybe that's what we'll get in the final day of reading these logs is the explanation of what eventually happened to her.
And cake.
And cake. Most
God,
importantly,
yeah.
cake.
Right, yes. All
Well,
right.
for you, for all of you, and perhaps you at home too. It's time
Yes,
for cake.
if you're playing along.
That's right.
Time for cake.
Death of cake.
Cake note.
I
Cute as
expect-
cake right now.
Expect some good jokes on those cakes.
Yeah.
I do have an angel food cake in my house. I might make a sympathy cake.
Wait a
I
minute.
got.
Oh,
I don't need
a
your
assembled
sympathy cake.
A sympathy cake because you guys are also making cakes, and yeah, I don't know. We'll see. I'm interested to see if what that looks like with both of them there. I would assume it's going to be Hyun-A talking about some sort of gesture, and Mute saying, "You're not real, so don't cake. That's stupid."
All right.
Yep.
Well,
So on that cliffhanger, we've still got a lot of questions, and
Yes.
hopefully next time we'll get some answers.
yep. Hopefully. Who knows with this crazy world of ours? But all right. Take easy, everybody.
Good night.
Hmm?